his life, and it's like, yo, dude, like, I'm pretty sure he's gone.
But before even the headshot, when Murphy staggers up and everyone opens fire, his arm gets blown off, like, completely. His right arm, the arm that he lost the hand on.
Yeah, they just dismember it.
Yeah, like, it gets blown off, and then they open fire, and he just gets completely tore up. And then Boddicker hits him with the headshot, and you see the back of his head just completely blow out. So I think in the original version, I don't think you see the hand actually getting blown off.
Oh, they cut away?
I think they cut away. I think you see him staggering around, like, kind of holding the stump.
Mm-hmm.
And then I don't remember if you see his arm get blown off in the original version. I mean, like I said, now kind of like the prevalent version is the director's cut, which it's only about a minute longer. That kind of restores the trims that they had to do of those super violent scenes.
Okay.
But the actual director's cut is only about a minute longer than the theatrical version. But that's an insanely violent scene. But that's the RoboCop candidate. And I don't know if you pick up on this at the beginning. They're talking about, well, we need to talk about the ED-209.
Okay.
Because the whole reason that there is the RoboCop program is because of the failure of the ED-209.
Which is also hilarious.
Which is another just insane scene. So, the movie it's established that Detroit is kind of a crime-ridden hellhole in this near future, which I've seen two different statements as to when the movie takes place. One was saying it was 1991, so about 4 years after this movie was made.
Okay.
And another saying 1997, so about 10 years after this movie was made. It's clearly the near future. It's not super far into the future, but it's a near future Detroit. And crime is out of control. They want to build a brand new, real fancy, real clean city called Delta City on top of where old Detroit is. And how they're going to clean up this area that they want to build this Delta City on is Dick Jones, the Ronnie Cox villain, has this idea for an enforcement droid, which looks like a monster. It's not a droid. It's huge. And it's ridiculous because he says it's used for urban pacification, but this thing is like crazy big with these two large caliber machine guns for arms.
It's like a huge mech assault thing.
And it's also got like missiles and everything, as you find out later on. It's insane that this is going to be like what's going to clean up the crime on the streets. So he unveils his droid, the enforcement droid 209, the ED or the ED 209, and they need an arrest subject. They're gonna test it out. So they pull this poor guy out of the boardroom crowd, give him a gun, say, point the gun in a threatening manner.
The Desert Eagle, right?
What?
The Desert Eagle that you were talking about?
The Desert Eagle, which was supposed to be the gun that RoboCop carries, but when they tested it out with the suit, it looks too small compared to RoboCop, especially in his hand. So they had to fashion a whole new automatic pistol out of I think a Beretta, and then they just added on to this Beretta. So the pistol that RoboCop uses is crazy big. But the Desert Eagle that they give to this poor guy, this poor schmuck who's going to really regret volunteering or agreeing to volunteer, Yeah, they give him the Desert Eagle, and that was supposed to be RoboCop's gun. So they say, hey, you know, point it at the droid in a threatening manner, and there's the little joke where he kind of points it at Dick Jones at first because he misunderstands, and he says, no, point it at the droid. So he points it at the droid. Immediately the thing comes to life. Great stop motion work in this film, by the way. I think Phil Tippett was the one that did the stop motion effects. He talked about Rob Bottin.
Uh-huh.
In the beginning is doing like the gore and the RoboCop suit effects. The stop motion in this movie, from especially the Ed 209, is Phil Tippett, who worked on the original Star Wars movies for ILM, and then he was later on he does Jurassic Park work. But the Ed 209 is stop motion. When it's in motion, when it's moving, it's a stop motion puppet or model, and then when it's stationary, it's clearly like a big giant model that they built. But the thing comes to life. It's got this like roar, and you know this real low register voice saying, you know, please drop your weapon. You have 20 seconds to comply. And Dick Jones says, hey, you'd better do what he says. So the guy immediately drops his weapon, you know, raises his hand to surrender. And then the droid keeps saying, you know, you now have 15 seconds to comply. And then everyone freaks out because the droid is not stopping like it should. And the guy's crazy, and he's running around, and he's trying to get help. And everyone is pushing him away. Poor guy. They want nothing to do with him because he's been targeted by this droid. And then the droid, you know, the time is up for him to surrender. And then the droid opens fire, and it's this insane, violent scene. This guy gets absolutely shredded by the gunfire.
And it's, I always thought it was very weird how kind of relaxed everybody is afterwards.
oh, they're like almost joking about it.
And they try to touch him, and they're like, don't touch him.
But oh my God. We've mentioned before, like, some of the great squib work in films, especially like action movies from the 80s and 90s. The squib work in this movie is so great, and this scene especially. This guy just gets turned into Swiss cheese, and it's the scene. It was one of the ones that got cut down from the X rating, but it goes on and on. There are so many angles in this scene where the guy gets just tore up by all this automatic gunfire. It goes on for so long.
Like, nobody thought to not put live ammunition while it's in a room of executives?
I don't know. That seemed like a bad call, right?
Like, to even have that thing in the room with all those important people is just like a lapse in judgment.
So this poor guy gets shot to hell. The gunfire ends up propelling him backwards into a model of Delta City. He's laying on the model of Delta City, and the thing just continues to riddle his body with bullets. And then it finally ramps down. Like, the gun barrels are both smoking. This guy is like non-existent anymore. He's just like a pile of blood and flesh.
And somebody yells, can we get a goddamn paramedic or something?
Yeah. Like, a paramedic's gonna, like you said, like with Murphy, like a paramedic's gonna do anything at that point. What is there to save? So yeah, this guy gets just tore up, and then afterwards, the head of OCP, the old man, Dan O'Harrow, is like, Dick, I'm very upset. But like, no one's traumatized. Everyone's just kind of like, well, I guess that's the breaks. Even when, the old man yells at Dick, and then Bob Morton says that he has a backup plan, like the RoboCop program. Even then, like, as he and his coworker, like, riding down the elevator, like, oh yeah, shame about that guy. And Miguel Ferrer, just as Bob Morton, is just like, well, that's life in the big city. And, like, just shrugs them off. And they're, like, talking to the guy. They're, like, friends with the guy before this, as they're headed into the boardroom earlier on in the scene. And they just, that guy's dead? Oh, well.
It's just like they're just disappointed that the model didn't work out, pretty much.
Yeah, he's disappointed that they sunk all that money into the ED 209, and it didn't work. And even Dick is like, "Oh, it's just a glitch. I'm sure we can fix it." It's like, a glitch? Did you see what it just fucking did to that guy? So that's definitely a scene that got the trim when it came time for the ratings. And I think what is trimmed is the shot of him getting shot even more as he's laying on top of the model of Delta City.
Yeah.
Because I remember the first time I watched that, I had the original Criterion Collection DVD of RoboCop, and that was the first time I had actually seen the director's cut. And I remember, like, me and Joel and another friend of ours, Chris Hosokawa, like, watching it at my house and just like getting our minds blown. Because we had never seen that scene before, and it was just so over the top. I mean, we had never seen the extended version of that scene before, and it's just so over the top that he keeps getting shot. So I have a little story about that scene and that guy who plays Kinney, the guy who gets killed by the Ed 209, is a guy by the name of Kevin Page. They covered him in 200 squibs. And that whole scene took 3 days to film because of the multiple angles. Watch the scene again, it cuts to so many different angles, like, while that guy's getting killed. So he has 200 squibs on, shoots for 3 days. If for those of your listeners who don't know what a squib is, it's like a little electrical charge that blows, like, the blood pack or whatever to simulate a gunshot wound. Mm-hmm. This guy's covered in 200 of them, so they keep going off. Like, that hurts. That's like a little pop or a little slap on the skin every single time one of those goes off, because it's a little electrical charge. So can you imagine, like, having to shoot this for 3 days and having 200 of these things go off? So, and the funny thing is, ultimately, Verhoeven isn't satisfied with that scene, and he calls Page back a few months later to reshoot everything all over again. And the poor guy has to endure it all over again. So this is the catalyst for the RoboCop program. And I don't know if you noticed, but as they're riding the elevator down, Bob Morton and his coworker are talking, and they say, "Hey, do you have any candidates?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, we have a few prime candidates." And that's when it cuts to the precinct, and you meet Murphy. And I kind of didn't make this connection until I sat down to watch it again recently as we were preparing to do the show. He's talking about having some prime candidates. Murphy was one of those prime candidates. That's why Murphy gets transferred to this precinct, which is probably one of the worst and the most, crime-ridden area of Detroit. Uh-huh. Murphy's a good candidate for the RoboCop program, so they're basically setting him up to be killed.
He's the fall guy.
Yeah, so that they can go ahead with their RoboCop program. So, RoboCop is created when Murphy gets killed.